Let us execute an immediate, sweeping analytical vector shift away from the sun-drenched coastal estates, dark web child protection operations, and high-profile private investigator grids of Southern California, and plunge straight into the high-octane, calculation-heavy tracking grids of quiet Midwestern neighborhoods, weaponized provincial secrecy, and the fiercely protective, dangerously fragile world of an elite family defense asset running a raw, tactical survival loop. We are crossing the threshold directly into the hyper-monitored, rain-slicked suburban perimeters of an active, multi-layered domestic deception operation, exploring the lethal analytical parameters of an intense, truth-shattering psychological matrix with local woman missing, the exceptional, pulse-pounding structural masterpiece engineered by the absolute undisputed sovereign of shifting multi-perspective timelines, visceral small-town nightmare mapping, and high-velocity domestic paranoia, Mary Kubica. This high-stakes narrative tracking sequence delivers an exceptional look at an operational crossroads where a fierce, long-hidden trauma survivor asset running an unyielding safety loop, a calculating web of deceptively perfect neighbors running a high-stakes proximity tracking routine, and an absolute defense of a shattered family's final survival metrics collide at terminal velocity. Let us map the strategic narrative grid. If you are an elite enthusiast of high-octane, slow-burn psychological thrillers where an endangered, hyper-observant female protagonist must navigate an absolute maze of rigged neighborhood gossip structures, corrupt marital gaslighting, and a deadly ring of active historical kidnapping fallouts while running a blind survival loop inside a completely compromised suburban ecosystem where an analytical mind uses deep behavioral profiling, calculated appearance boundaries, and absolute emotional stamina to outmaneuver an invisible predatory domestic shadow network, and where the author utilizes an incandescent two local women and a young girl mysteriously vanish from a peaceful suburb, only for the child to impossibly return 11 years later, unleashing a lethal truth storm diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural limits, this book is engineered to lock you in. Kubica completely dominates the high-precision small-town facade meets suffocating domestic angst puzzles dynamic, capturing the heart-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating domestic paranoia, and heavy deductive depth popularized by genre vargs like Gillian Flynn, Karen Slaughter, Lisa Jewell, and Shari LaPena, while treating realistic childhood institutional escape logistics, complex multi-generational memory alignment arcs, and protective high-density psychological extraction grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on the highly volatile, calculation-heavy baseline of our central legendary powerhouse assets, a fractured circle of neighborhood residents operating under a severe, calculation-heavy handicap of massive historic trauma, suffocating protective secrets, and a hyper-visible targeting canvas within a tightly knit community loop. Behind their rigorous block party database footprints and tense personal history logs lies an intricate matrix of hidden faction allegiances, deeply buried marital hostility, and sharp, high-stakes tactical maneuvers. Their collective defense mechanisms are locked down tight behind an 11-year history of dealing with an unsolved structural tragedy and surviving complex psychological ambushes, their entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring sudden threat vectors from an encroaching local cover-up network, parsing complex behavioral shifts from their close circle of seemingly innocent neighbors, and shielding their vulnerable sanctuary nodes from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless elite cleanup offensive. The spark ignites when an unexpected high-frequency structural anomaly breaches their active scanning perimeter. A young girl who vanished over a decade ago suddenly escapes her underground confinement node and materializes on a rural highway corridor, instantly cross-referencing the neighborhood's collective historical timeline with a high-level calculated malice. As the hostile network's mobilization phases enter an increasingly lethal terminal tier across her return timeline, a series of alternating multi-perspective logs tracking the historical countdown to the original disappearances and the active present-day investigation parallel each other. The official diagnostic metrics at the global tracking centers flash white heart when her unauthorized tracking maneuvers and raw protective output reveal that a powerful cabal operating behind closed garage doors is radically, impossibly altering the suburb's historical balance of power. The standard boundaries of routine neighborhood policing and peaceful civilian protocols crumble, and our central protagonists run completely out of standard diplomatic escape vectors. They are thrust directly into an active, invisible war across elite suburban blocks, where deceptive childhood figures masking their true tracking coordinates, highly manipulative family ghosts, and a calculation-heavy psychological shadow network launch aggressive countermeasures to permanently suppress their survival data stream.
The tactical parameters instantly explode as their historical and survival worker turns completely active, transforming the isolated basement enclosures, dark cul-de-sac surveillance perimeters, and private fortified residential rooms into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone. Our protective, hyper-vigilant heroine is forced to deploy her massive intuitive tradecraft, elite behavioral mapping skills, and raw emotional stamina to preserve her focus before his relentless, calculation-heavy proximity containment phase permanently deletes her boundaries. The encroaching threat vectors are purposeful and resolute, determined to deploy deep systemic leverage, localized blackmail routines, and persistent psychological dominance to break her perimeter, only to realize her hardened defensive protocols and shifting counter-narratives match their raw tactical speed step for step. Every midnight archival excavation, every silent choice to stand off against an encroaching adversary behind standard security barriers, and every intense moment of channeling raw, unyielding survival mechanics chips away at her reliance on original peaceful rules. What follows is an exceptional, high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit. We watch the high society elite's deceptive perimeters completely unwrapped as Mary Kubica reveals that the true victory requires more than just surviving an initial frame-up or managing a difficult family revelation. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense of individual dignity, personal truth, and systemic survival against a cold, calculating machine of domestic manipulation and psychopathic supremacy, while our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force, creating a fierce, protective, absolute web of dark possessive loyalty around their union. A brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations and high-stakes evidentiary breakthroughs shifts the clock into its terminal phase, proving that historical emotional hazards have tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending lock-grid trap and permanently secure her sanctuary, our resilient heroine must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of her final boundary lines. It is a psychological thriller, domestic suspense noir, small-town mystery, high-velocity contemporary puzzle masterpiece that treats deep relational logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one-return child triggers a fatal cul-de-sac showdown energy, where a sudden pause during an active franchise tactical briefing, an unexpected shift in an adversary's protective physical posture during a high-stakes standoff confrontation, or a heavy, possessive realization that an elite intelligence operative has completely mapped your personal coordinates carries massive structural weight. Kubica writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, capturing the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of a private executive vault before a major corporate takeover, and the distinct, subtle scent of polished mahogany, damp autumn leaves, old basement concrete, rain-slicked suburban asphalt, dynamic adrenaline, spilled copper, and pure, unadulterated suspense. What truly elevates this contemporary standalone marvel into elite territory is the author's unmatched ability to balance complex, high-stakes relationship dynamics and genuine protective power tradecraft, alongside a breathtaking narrative pace and deep emotional hooks. Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable, superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the complex, modern corporate and high society underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking tactical breakthroughs before ratcheting up to an absolute jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total, hard-earned advancement to their horizon. Local One Missing is the definitive pro-level upgrade your high-stakes contemporary thriller and intense asset suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unputdownable. It proves that when your entire sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating institutional monster, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your elite survival training, and fight like hell alongside your network to rewrite the data. So secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track